Hi everyone, it's Max here. Just thought I'd give you a brief overview of Tillo's new blog and resource centre. What do I mean by a resource centre? Well, we have expanded our blogs function to include not just blog posts but also landing pages and regular website pages, and filtered those by category. So we've got our blog posts, but we've also got our customer stories, our guides and ebooks, our webinars, our wildcards, business and innovation podcast, and also our events listed. So I thought I'd just show you how we achieved that in this kind of nice tabbed interface, and how you can pull the data you require to populate those listings and that index page to do basically the same as your blog does, which essentially is every time you post a blog post, there's a database being built in the background in like the form of a table. So for example, this featured image is one column. It has a bunch of different values for those, for the URL where that image sits. This blog title or blog post title is another column. And essentially what happens is the blog post to build this listing goes through all the rows and populates these images and text fields with the values in those columns. And you can do much the same with web and landing pages, with a little bit of HubL trickery and using HubDB. So the first thing you're going to want to do is go to your traffic report, which might seem a bit left field, but when you export this traffic in the CSV format, what you will get is you'll get a folder with 4 files, and one of those files will be called CMS All Pages Table Export. And if you import it into something like Google Sheets, you find something like this. So we've got the page's name, we've got the HTML title, URL. Which, if you look at the blog, is essentially this is the HTML title. Whatever this link on this button is the URL. So it's not got everything you need, but it's a really good starting place, and it also will give you the content type. So, for example, if you filter by landing page, blog post, knowledge article, standard page, which is a standard web page, you can start to build a quite nice database of all your landing pages. You can either do it all you can eat with the whole content on your website, or you can go into your chosen spreadsheet program and start filtering like this. What I would suggest you avoid doing is start trying to add additional columns in here and maybe just trim off the fat. So really these first, I guess, kind of 7 or 8 columns here up to G will get you pretty far. And if you import it into HubDB, you'll get a table like this, which will give a name. And then you can start adding in additional columns. So for example, I've renamed the content type here, and I've renamed the content type to page type. So we've got our standard pages, and here's where I've classified things into customer stories, guides. We've got tags which are used in the blog, and then we've got additional things which are only used in specific categories, like the events page. So for example, at the bottom here, you'll see there's like a beginning and an end date for our events, which correspond to this events tab here and are populated here, but they're only really used in this events tab. So you can build your table out and have bits that are used here or there and modify the templates that occur in each tab. So to begin with populating these, I started out with this customer stories page, and if you ignore the hero header, basically it's just a simple HubL snippet, and it looks a bit like this. So we've got just a div to sort of contain the whole listing element, which you see here. So this whole thing is the div, and I've just called that customer stories. And then we start referencing this HubDB table. So set resources equals HubDB table rows. It identifies the table by the number of the table. And then we add a HubL filter which says content type equals, or underscore EQ equals, customer stories. And then we set up a for loop. So we say basically just iterate for, through all those rows. And with that filter in place, we're saying find all the rows that have the value customer stories in the content type, and then populate this article here. The article itself is a span 4, which means it spans 4 of the 12 columns, which is why you get that nice kind of 3 by 3 or 3-column grid, and it will keep iterating through that, populating, for example, the href, which is the URL that we find in our table, and the featured image, which I've kind of gone in and built out manually with a new column, and then the resource name, which and that is already featured in the spreadsheet as you saw. Again, the H3 is wrapped in an anchor with a URL, so you can click on that. That's the URL that came straight out of the data export, and the resource meta title again came straight out of the export. I have done a brief kind of intro bit of text, which is again manually populated simply by extracting the meta description from each page and copying and pasting that in. A little bit of grunt involved there. No, it's not autonomous or whatever, or automated, but it's a pretty quick way to get it done because you've got your nuts and bolts and your starting point with this data here, and then it's very easy to populate this table here. Another thing to note is also you can import and add to it. It has this add to function as well, so you're not committed to just doing it all in one go. You can select maybe all your landing pages, get those done, see how they look, and then add by a different data type later. So that's the sort of essence of it. Once you've sort of achieved a basic listing like this and understand the mechanics of that, you can go in a bit deeper and go for something like this kind of tabbed interface that we've got here. Essentially, each tab is doing this kind of filtering by the content type. So if we go to our modified blog index, you'll see here, this is basically kind of a standard tabs HTML setup with a little bit of JavaScript to mark the current tab as an active class. Pulled that straight off w3cschools.com. That's not anything particularly fancy. But what we've done is we've wrapped the kind of blog index module inside that div, kind of topped and tailed that. So that's the standard blog index module sits inside that first tab, and then all the others sit inside here. And you'll see here, for example, this EQ guide is pretty much a straight copy of this article here. And then we just go through. So, again, it's resourcing tables, content type equals guide. Wrap that. That's wrapped in the tab there. And again, it's just pulling those rows: resource URL, resource featured image, resource name, resource title, and which corresponds to these columns you'll see here: title, URL, meta description, featured image, which is all been populated beforehand. And then every time you've got a new event or a new guide to add, you can go and add that manually, or as I say, you can do episodic imports and add to that table. You don't have to kind of replace it all in one go. And then a couple of niceties down at the bottom with a little bit of extra JavaScript. We've added an event listener here because obviously when you go to this page, when you go to this blog page, you've got the tabs, but this tab opening is a click event, which is happening on page. Ideally, what you want to be able to do is go from something like a regular web page, and in your nav, we've actually been able to add the individual tabs into the navigation using a tab ID. So, for example, if I click here and I click on webinars, it takes me to our resource page, straight into the webinars tab. And the reason it's able to do that is because I've added these event listeners here. And what that event listener is basically doing is it's simulating a click. It's basically saying, window location href index of. It's basically saying if once the page loads, this window URL has hash guides in it, then click on the guides tab. If it has else if hash webinars, click on the webinars tab, and so on. So it's simulating that click because basically you can't kind of open a tab on the page load without doing something like this. It's an on-page interaction. Anyway, hope that's been interesting and helpful. Food for thought. It's one way of doing it. Obviously, there's lots of possibilities in HubSpot, but really pleased with how we've been able to facilitate that and expand our content offering and offer a lot more useful stuff that might have got ignored elsewhere. Cheers.